Enjoy a seat at the table and good company, where great conversations and meaningful discussions happen.
I'm Sara Fiedelholtz, a conversationalist. Welcome to And Good Company, where you can enjoy a seat at the table for meaningful conversation. We all know what really truly makes a dinner party great isn't the food, it's the people sitting around the table having a conversation. And it's that company and their interactions. So I'm very pleased to be in the company of Joe Jordan, who is the CEO and president of the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Fort Wayne.
That's correct.
Right, and Iric Headley, who is the director of Fort Wayne United.
That's correct.
Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
So I want to start with a little bit for you to give me a little bit of the history of your organizations and sort of how they got started here in Fort Wayne. So who wants to start?
I can start.
Okay.
Boys and Girls Club was founded by a guy by the name of Rudy Mahara back in 1989. So we haven't been around, even though the national movement has been around for a long time, but the local affiliate hasn't been around for a long time. And Rudy thought that Fort Wayne should have a Boys and Girls Club, and got Tom Kelly engaged. Tom actually is the first guy that he reached out to, and of course Tom, with all his resources and heart for kids, galvanized the community. So we became Boys and Girls Clubs of Fort Wayne. And so we've been around for, that's 30-something years,
yeah.
but it's a pretty young organization.
31 years.
Yeah, it's a pretty young organization compared to other Boys and Girls Clubs in our country.
And Iric, how did Fort Wayne United get started?
Well, homicide is the leading cause of death in African American males ages 10 to 24. The age used to be 15 to 24, but now 10 to 24, which is quite disturbing. So we just chose to try to get in a space of doing something about it. So many years ago now, there was a group called the Social Status of African American Males that wrote a proposal in partnership with the city to National League of Cities. And that proposal was looked at, and the city of Fort Wayne became one of the first cities to be a part of the National League of Cities organization called Cities United. So now we have over 150 cities that are involved in Cities United, really focused in on reducing the homicide number amongst African American males, black men and boys. So we started there. We launched in 2016 with a steering committee of whites and blacks and Republicans and Democrats, women and men, everybody in between, because we believe that this issue needs all of us at the table, not just one segment of the population to really make a dent in it.
Right.
So yeah, we started in 2016 and just really working our hardest to fight against and combat that homicide and really addressing the root causes of violence.
And how is it different that it's a city, because it's a city entity? I mean, you're an employee of the city. How is that different than being, per se, a nonprofit organization? What makes that different? Does that change your funding elements or what support you get? How is that different?
Yeah, it's all of the above, and what it speaks to is more of an interest and more of a passion of the city of Fort Wayne leadership, the administration, to really get involved in this issue and say, hey, we got a population that's dying prematurely. So it really speaks to the issue of homicide, but from a city perspective. So that's what makes it different.
And I'm the chairperson for the Fort Wayne United.
Right. Well, I was
initiative.
going to say,
So,
let's get on the table how you two know
Yeah,
each other.
we,
So you serve on each other's. Well, you're on the committee for Fort Wayne United, and you're on the board, right?
Boys and
Are you
Girls
still
Club.
on the board? Yeah.
I'm on the board for
Yeah,
Boardwalk,
for
yes.
Boys and Girls
Boys
Club.
but
So-
more importantly, we connected at a much higher level than those two. We've been, actually, he's my best friend now. We've known
really?
each other for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
But I do want to commend Mayor Henry for embracing this whole initiative and creating this, united front around boys and men of color,
Right.
and then having the wisdom to hire Iric to lead it, and that's why we're here. And
Right.
that's why it's been so impactful from his leadership in Mayor's decision to do
Right.
it.
And certainly, though, when you start to look at young African American black men and boys, it goes so far beyond just dealing with the issues of homicide. I mean, there are so many issues and elements that they're up against
Right.
as they grow. So I'm going to talk to you about that in a minute. But
Sure.
what I wanted to also talk to you about is how did you get involved in community organization and youth development? What made you guys decide to want to do this?
You know, I've always been involved. I mean, I was blessed to grow up in this community and been very the recipient of a lot of youth development programming when I was younger. And so I kind of grew up in that way. And then I always knew I wanted to do something impactful to serve the community and give back. And so even though when I graduated from college, I went into the corporate world, it's all about that money at that time, right? Trying to get the
Well, you're still trying to get money, aren't you?
Yeah, different way.
Different way, but yeah.
Certainly was looking for some personal gain on on the return from my college years. But even in my corporate life, I did a lot of volunteerism with a lot of the local not-for-profit sectors, and that's actually how I was founded by a guy named Will Clark. Saw me do a presentation on behalf of United Way when I was working with a corporation, and he asked me would I be interested in getting into the not-for-profit space, and I'm glad he did because I love it. I mean, that's really where my heart's at, community service work.
Then how did you get in here?
And I think I could speak for Joe and I when I say, yeah, we chose to get involved with the work, but I also like to believe that the work chose us, I was just like Joe, pursuing the dollars and pursuing the ladders of climbing the corporate world and the music industry. So for us to be here, I told myself I'll never work for a church, I'll never work for local government. So for us to be here, it really does speak to how God kind of shapes and molds and directs. So for me, it's really just being around my father, for instance, who was a pastor, being around so many different leaders in my home country here, and just seeing that to really make an impact, you got to get involved, you got to organize, and you have to do it a certain way, to really be around individuals who were making an impact, who were changing lives, who were shifting hearts, and not really wanting to get involved in that work because I saw the other side of it pretty early. But being right back here was because I was not making impact. I was making money, but I wasn't making an impact. So we want to make an impact. We believe in people, and we believe in the people that we serve, and we believe that they need bridges. And so we're architects at the end of the day. We want to build bridges to get people across to where they need to be.
So with those ideas, how do you, what do you think are the skills that you think are necessary to be a good leader? Like, Iric, you say that you describe yourself as a relational person.
Right.
And so what does that mean, and how does that influence how you lead?
That's a great question. That's a question I didn't know you were going to ask, did you?
I hope you don't know any of the
I don't know any
questions.
of them. Yeah, that's a good one. And I personally think relationship is at the core of everything, right? But before relationship is preceded by trust. And so right now, a lot of the issues we have are because of the lack of trust between communities of color and law enforcement. And so trust is everything, but relationship is a big component. So for me, that leadership, what is the biggest surrounding component of leadership is trust. And how do I build relationship with the people that I hope to lead? How do I build trust with those individuals? I hope that if you would ask every one of our steering committee members, they would say, I trust Iric. And we're not talking my skill sets, but my character, my integrity, my heart, my vision. I hope that they trust me, which builds relationship. And so those two components go hand in hand. I don't think I can lead without trust. I don't think I can lead without relationship. It's more of a leadership style for me just because I kind of dive in deep on things like this, and I like to build an intimate relationship with those that I lead. And I'm better at small segments of leadership, right? I couldn't be a mayor, for instance. I couldn't lead 200,000 people.
Maybe a couple,
No, not at all, not at all. I've seen that side of it too. So for me, it's really about trust, relationship, building trust with people, people depending on you to lead them in the right direction. I take that seriously.
And then, Joe, you talk about this idea that this purpose-driven movement. So obviously trust is a foundation. So, but how does that idea of a purpose-driven movement, how does that, to change the world, but how does that influence or impact how you lead?
Well, you know, I've met some incredible leaders, a lot of leaders in my own family. My brothers and sisters have been led me and lead the family and lead other entities in the community that they reside in. And so I grew up in that space, I played basketball all my life and always was chosen to be the leader of the team. So I think it's making sure that you're never bigger than the mission, right? It's really not about you.
Right.
It's really not about you. So when you are in a position to lead others, you always have to make sure that the mission and the purpose is always front and center. It's not about you. Where it becomes difficult when people think it's about them.
Right.
And so I've always put the mission or the purpose in front of me, and always is self-aware, right? Leadership is about always checking yourself to make sure that that mission is beyond you, right? And so for me, it's about being humble enough to submit yourself to something bigger than you.
Yet you also reference a quote from the author, D.L. Kaufman, that life isn't about success, it's about significance.
That's correct.
So being significant or having impact, that's not necessarily, you can't have that in being humble. So you do have to, I mean, I think it's working beyond yourselves, right?
It is. Significance is really about, focusing on what are you giving back, not what are you receiving.
Right.
Unfortunately, our world looks at success about requirements that you
Right,
get, the house
you
to
get,
live
what I
in,
get, yeah.
the job title, the income. But when you get past that, life should be about what are you doing for other people and what impact are you making on other people's lives. And that's where you get to the level of significance from.
And I think that when you look at sort of the impact of changing people's lives, I mean, Iric, you said that you have to think about the context in which the lives you desire to change.
Absolutely.
And how you have to think about how context potentially to change the story. And so how, you gave an example of somebody who cut you off and, you get mad when you're driving that they cut you and stuff, but then you find out later that they were rushing to get their wife to the hospital.
Yeah.
So, there's the idea of Maimonides, who's like a Jewish philosopher. What you're supposed to do, like if you see a ambulance and you have to pull over and you have to stop, you get annoyed, whatever. But what he says is that really you should take that moment to say a prayer, that the ambulance gets to the person in time. And so that changes your perspective.
It does.
So how do you see that? Why is this idea of context and looking at context of situations so important? Especially what I want to look at is within the stereotypes, especially of young black men.
So Joe and I get the opportunity to provide context to so many lives. You think about today's society, where we are right now, there are a lot of comments that are made without context because we don't have conversations with people. We just make a lot of comments. You look at social media, it's comments.
Right.
It's not a life of context and making sure that we're clear.
Right. It's not a life of conversation.
It's not at all.
Right.
It's not at all. It's those 10-second bites that we live by.
Right.
Absolutely. So somebody told the context of my life, and my life has a lot more context than what you see in 10-second sound bites. Joe's life, your life, everyone's life has a lot of context. So when we look at where we are today, we lack a lot of context. We lack a lot of care. We lack a lot of concern. But in the lives of young black men, there's this stigma and this stereotype that we don't look into the context of why. We don't ask the question of why, how, when, where. We just say this is who you are and we're done.
I mean, there is the perception that black men these are the stereotypes, terrible, evil, lazy, they don't want to work, they're more violent.
Right.
How do we change these narratives?
We change the narratives by doing the work that we're doing.
Okay.
We have to build, let's go back to trust. We have to build trust with so many people in this community, at the top, in the middle, to really ask them to believe us that the story is different. And then when they have that experience and they say, wow, I trust you, I came into this circle, and yes, the story is different, they become ambassadors. In the same way that lies are told, we can only tell the truth to combat the lies.
Right.
And so we want people to tell the truth about these lives, that yes, somebody might end up here, but let's look back if we truly care and find out how did they get to this point. And that's where our work kicks in,
Right.
is that if we know these are the issues that black men face, black men and boys face, right? When you do these positive deviant studies and you realize and you understand that these positive things lead to a person's success,
Right.
and it has to do with family and it has to do with resources and connection and access, then our work becomes easier. So we can build something and say, if this is what leads people to be successful, we want to build that pipeline. We want to build those support mechanisms to make sure that they have the best chance of being successful.
Okay.
So the context is critical to us understanding that big
Right.
picture.
And I think
good.
the context overall is looking at the reality. Like you said, you have to be implicit about the issues
Absolutely.
and then explicit about the solutions.
Yes.
So in preparation of, talking to you, I looked at some of the issues and just the realities that
Right.
young black men in America face. And the future is, for many, is not bright. They are more than any other group in this country. They face a greater rate of imprisonment, a greater chance of being killed, and a greater chance of being employed. So they face not only the negative stereotyping, but also racial profiling and discrimination. And what I thought was so interesting, that the Kaiser Family Foundation did a study of young black men, and 74% of them had a close friend in prison. 64% of them had a close friend who's murdered, and 47% have been arrested, wrongfully arrested. They believe that one of the big problems overall is that 89% that they didn't take their education seriously enough. 51% believe that they were unfairly stopped by the police, and 21% said that people act as if they're afraid of them. So just those barriers alone, that's coming from where they are. That's not even all of the systemic, societal, and institutional issues, but there's so much, stacked in a way against them.
Absolutely.
And how do you sort of begin to take that down, or get them to have a better perception of themselves and their situation, or not necessarily, because I know, Joe, you're very big, and some of it has to be personal responsibility.
Sure.
Some of it, like the fact that,
Sure.
if they don't take school seriously, or they,
Exactly.
drop out, that they have to take responsibility for. But how do you start this whole process?
Well,
it just
I think
seems-
that's a big process, but certainly, I think as an African American man growing up in Fort Wayne, very, very poor, family of 10, living in the hood. One of the things that my parents taught us is the value that we have for ourselves. Who are you? And if you have a strong base of who you are, a strong foundation of who you are, you're not going to let the world tell you who you are. And too many of our African American young men is allowing somebody else to tell them who they are, because they really don't have a strong foundation, whether it's faith, whether it's just simply saying that, I'm a man of God, I'm a child of God, and I'm gonna take his definition of me as opposed to taking someone else's definition of me. So I've been able to combat all of that stuff because I know who I am.
Right.
And it's not about what I have on my back, how much money I have in my bank account, and what kind of car I drive. It's just that I am a child of God, and so you can't tell me who I am. I already know. In too many incidents in our young people's lives, they listen to other people's definition, whether it's rap music, whether it's the racism that they're getting every day, the stereotypes that are the labels that's been put upon them. They believe it, and if they don't have anybody there to tell them who they are,
Right.
then they believe it.
You had a strong father presence, correct? What about you, Iric? Did you have what was the role of your father in your life?
So I love to say that my father was an amazing pastor, and but wasn't really focused on home. He was really focused on his role at the church,
Okay.
and so those things were a little bit lopsided, and I'm sure he would do it differently, right? Just like I already would do it differently with my 11-year-old and 7-year-old son. So yeah, my life with my father was not relational. There wasn't a relationship there. There wasn't a bond. There wasn't a connection.
But you were able to observe what he was doing for the community, right? I mean, you could at least, as a role model, in a sense of how you should carry yourself.
But in the mind of a child, at the expense of that child, it turns into something that you start to resent. So the church for us was not a positive. It was his job, but it wasn't us. It wasn't our lives. It was something that took away from us. But really, what motivated me to want to be different. I grew up as Joe says, I grew up in the hood too, on Oliver Street, and then on Bowser, right in the Oxford community that one of our initiatives sits in, and you just wake up and you say, you know what, I want to do something a little bit more. But again, that context is if there's nobody to foster that, if there's nobody to push that, if there's nobody to say, hey, here's a way to get there, it becomes a dream that's not reality.
Well, that's what I sort of felt that your two organizations sort of fill in. Because a lot of what you are trying to teach and instill in your members and the people involved, men involved in your program, is this idea of self-worth, value, character, importance of responsibility, and normally those are things that a child would get in the home.
Absolutely.
I mean, a lot of that is the family. So,
but it does take extra reinforcement for African American men and boys because they get so much of the negative.
Right.
Just by walking outside their door, they're bombarded with all this negative messaging. So it takes extra effort to make sure that we tell these young men who they are.
But one of the things I was wondering, like, what keeps you motivated to continue to do these work and these efforts? Because sort of a lot of what you're doing is, in some ways, you're planting the seed. But then they have to nurture it and grow. And so, how do you measure success? How do you know if you've been successful? Or because at the end of the day, how many people make the changes and really do it? So how do you look at that? How do you measure success for your work and to keep yourselves motivated?
For me, motivation is just looking in the face of a child and understanding that he or she deserves a right to reach their full potential, and I have a chance to help them do that. So that's the motivation, just simply looking in the face of a child every day. How I've been in the business long enough to see the results of some of the work that I've done over the years. And when you walk into the grocery store and somebody runs up to you that you don't recognize and hugs you and say, thank you, thank you. I'm like, don't really remember who you are. And then they repeat to you what you said to them that helped them get over a hump in some way or shape or form, and name the program and the people that work with them to help them get their GED or the Head Start diploma, whatever it is. I'm old enough that I get some of that now.
And as Joe talked about that person in the store that walks up to you, I've had that experience, right? So we were helping a young woman who had this list of things that this man in this organization did for her 20 years earlier, and a week or two later she was talking about Joe Jordan. And so when we have an opportunity to change the mindset of a person, it's guaranteed to change the trajectory. It's guaranteed to change so many different things that you might not see later on. And you talked about planting a seed. Sometimes in most cases it's really about tilling up that old soil that's been there, that's been hard. Sometimes you got to get a jackhammer in and tear up that concrete, and you have to do a lot of rehabilitation so you can plant a seed. So our measurements are very non-traditional. While a city council or a funder or somebody might say, show me the numbers.
Right, like have homicides gone down? Has crime in the community gone down?
Exactly.
That may not be.
That may not be the only number, right? We have an initiative that has shown in a specific community, crime has gone down.
That's the
10-point coalition.
The 10-point coalition, where they, as a neighborhood, they walk around and are visible.
Absolutely,
and sort of, yeah.
But the one element, just again, to speak it transparently here, that's missing, is that we can't just focus on decreases.
Right.
We got to focus on increases also.
Right.
Have we increased the hope of that community? Have we increased the employment opportunities?
Or their belief that,
Yes.
But I wonder, for both of you, because what I wanted to do was, because we could take so many issues that young men and black men face, that I sort of wanted to say, okay, let's look at just the school issue and the impact that has. But one of the things I'm wondering is, are you getting them too late? Like, even though, because I would say kindergarten is when you need to get them. I mean, in some cases, by the time they're in your programs where they're older, right?
Yep.
They're 18 to 26 or something.
14 or so.
14 to 26.
Because what they were saying is that, like, what I wonder is, no kindergartner walks in hating school. You know, every little kindergartner, you know, they're innocent, they have curiosity. I mean, they love going to school, they love their teachers, and so it's there. And then what happens is, even in kindergarten, the fact that it's supposed to be a level playing field, it's not. No. Because if the kid, some kids come in, they've had books read to them. I mean, it's been shown that the amount of words that children from lower socioeconomic homes, actually, they're spoken to less. So the number of words in their vocabulary are less. And so are we starting at the right point, or are you coming in already when it's too late, that we need to even start further back?
Early intervention's always the best, right? I'm never going to deny that, but I don't think it's never too late.
Amen.
I think God, excuse me, but I think God's intervention, no matter how old you are, is awesome. And I've seen people turn around when we met them at 15 years old, and they become very productive.
No, I'm not saying that they can't, but I think it's harder. And by that time, they built up, a lot of that armor and defensiveness, and they sort of also, I think sometimes they don't, it's sort of like they put themselves in a straitjacket and they don't know how to even get themselves, like they put themselves in that situation.
Right.
But I'm just wondering if we need to think about starting, because like I said, but when you then look at what happens to young men in school, and the fact that they are absolutely more likely to drop out, and there is a correlation between African American men that drop out of high school and then are incarcerated
or killed.
They said, or killed.
Yeah.
They said 82% of black men in federal prison did not have a high school diploma.
Yep.
So, and I think that what I really thought about when I was looking into this was thinking about that part of it is partly the problem within the schools, because more black students are expelled or suspended for what are behavioral issues, because of that fear that people have, that as a opposing African American male, what their stereotype of him is going to be. They're they're more likely than to be suspended, and really, like, that type of punishment or doesn't necessarily work, or why taking them out of the situation. Also about how they're not given the necessary of how they learn, or those peer interactions.
Right.
One of the things that both of you have, your programs are built on sports. You have the MVP basketball program, and you have the
Late night basketball.
And why? What is it that sports, do you feel, give you or bring you? Now, in your program also, a lot of them, they can also work to have their record.
It's an offering. It's a component that we have.
So
yes.
Talk to me about how sports, because that's a very different approach than sort of coming at the issues that maybe a traditional classroom.
Well, for me, sports is a very important part of my life, and I played basketball, as I said, all my life, and my family was my brothers are basketball players, and sports really kind of, for us, it's kind of, you can kind of be on an equal playing field, right? Either you can play or you can't play. And so, and it's done so much for race relationships. And it's something that I value because it taught me a lot of personal skills, around teamwork, around reaching goals, setting goals, working with others, understanding other people's personalities. Sports is big in our community because a lot of emphasis has been brought to our community based on the number of African Americans who saw their way out of poverty through sports. So it's big. It's big for our kids. I mean, if you ask an African American kid what he wants to be, it's going to be a football, basketball, or a rapper,
Right.
because that's what they see. Unfortunately, we don't highlight a lot of the professionals, scientists, and doctors, and lawyers as we celebrate the athlete. And so they're just product of their environment. They're just creating a value based on what they see every day.
And it's also a lack of exposure outside of their traditional environment. So if you see one thing and you see success as, hey, my pathway to success is playing basketball or being a rapper, of course, I don't know a single human being that sets up at night and say, tomorrow I'm going to fail, I want to. So of course they want to be successful, and if those are the examples that they have to look at as success, then of course that's what's going to happen. And so for me, while Joe has sports, mine is music. And so we have, to answer your question, we have a late night basketball league because we want to meet those young men where they were. It was an attraction. It was something that we can bring them together and then offer them life-changing resources. And that's what it's about. It's not about basketball.
Right. I also think that for men in general, that you're all better at when you're doing something. Like, you're not good at just sitting down and having, like when women say, oh, I want to talk to you, like that communication, but sort of having, you're doing something.
Right.
And I also think, though, that there's a defined set of rules that everybody knows, like the rules of the game. And so you can still, all your differences and diversity can come there because you have these rules and structure in which everybody has to, if you're going to participate, this is the way you have to do it. So I think it gives you that also. So like, in between you can talk to someone or,
Absolutely.
Or
Absolutely.
practice. But I think that you don't realize how important the sports and, having them in sort of, and the metaphor, obviously, that you get them shooting hoops and not shooting on the street has worked.
Right.
I think that you can't underestimate the use of sports.
Right, it's true. Or many other extracurricular activities or arts. I mean, it's really about getting those individuals involved in something that they're passionate about, but also, again, a place and an environment and an atmosphere that we can intentionally build trust and relationship. And that's what we created that program for.
And I want to talk to you a little bit about, because I have this ideas about a real place, literally, not just a sense of place, but an actual place. And you opened the new beautiful facility in 2019, and so you've now had the members there for a year. How has it changed them to have this incredible facility that's brand new and all the, nothing's broken and the latest technology? How do you find that sense of the place itself impacts them?
Well, it's impacting all of us, even staff. I mean, one of the things that I wanted to do when I walked into the Boys and Girls Club 11 years ago is build a new facility. First day I knew I wanted to build a new facility because I believe that our kids deserve better. And I'm so happy that our community agreed with me and to build this incredible facility for them. So the sense of pride is there. When these kids walk in and we tell them that this is their club. And so often we ask kids to be a first-class citizen, but we always put them in third world environments. And so to have a brand new facility and say, this is for you, this community built this for you, this is your club, the sense of pride was just amazing to see in these kids' faces.
And do you think that helped with building their character and their?
Anytime you got kids that understand the community cares about them, outside of their own home. It's just give them more buy-in to do the right thing, have more sense of pride where they live at, the place where and so it's snowballs. It snowballs.
And do you think that part of the issue is that there isn't like a place, or is there a place where young African American, men, because maybe they age out of coming to the Boys and Girls Club,
Yes.
is that there isn't an actual physical place where they can come and hang out? I mean, there's the why,
Right.
I guess, but does that give a sense of place, or do you think?
I would say we have awesome places in our community. We have Boys and Girls Club, YMCA, Parks and Recreation, Weiser Park Youth Center, Macmillan. I could go down the list of the places. City Life. Nigel Sims at City Life has created an awesome place. So again, that the complexity of that issue is something that we keep learning about. And so attachment to place, feeling disenfranchised, all those types of things are contributors to the issue. There's no silver bullet. And that's what we keep learning. I mean, Joe's been in this work twice as long as I have. And when we're talking about these issues, he's learning. He's teaching me, I'm learning. And so that attachment to physical place is something that definitely contributes. But we have some awesome places and awesome leaders in these places who are truly reaching out. We've got, what I'm grateful for, you mentioned the school system, the data. What I'm grateful for is that we have some awesome individuals in our public school systems who are really focused in on these issues and who understand these issues because they are African American people, African American moms and fathers themselves. So our students across this city, they have some awesome places, awesome resources, awesome people that they can turn to. And what we need to do, what we keep needing to do, is to build the trust so they will come.
And when you say trust, what is that? Is that like, I mean, probably with when you were a child, it would be if your father said he would do something with you and then he can't do it. So it's keeping your word. But what else do you think are the elements of building that trust?
It's us pursuing them, right? It's us pursuing them, letting them know that we care, letting them know that we value them. It's opening that door and allowing that organic relationship to build, allowing them. There's a person that I know who goes to a person and says, "You need me to be your mentor." Instead, what we need to be doing is allowing that mentee to ask us to mentor them. And so when we pursue them and we just have relationship, we just have conversation, we just sit down and talk, we do what they want to do in most cases, that trust is going to be built as long as we keep our word, as long as we don't betray that trust, as long as we don't violate that trust. And it's going to take time because everybody has a different level of trust and a different capacity to build it. So it's about us. That first step is always pursuing. And when they pursue us, allowing for that organic relationship to take place. Would you agree?
I totally agree. We have to create an environment that allow people to be vulnerable, right? These people have been beat up some kind of way, right? The world has told them that they're trash. And so when they're coming
that they're not even worthy enough to get a high school diploma.
That's right.
So we've got to make sure that environment is non-judgmental and allowing them to be vulnerable so we can build that strong trust so we can walk down that path with them. Most people want help. Most young men want to be led in the right direction, but they, like any of us, we all have these egos, right? And so, and particularly with them, they have to create some egos to even walk in
to admit it that they
Yeah, I mean they're getting beat up all the time, and all the thing they hear is all this negativity.
Right.
So they got to build up a persona to defend themselves, right? So when they're in our space, we want them to be vulnerable so that we can really move the needle for them.
And you also both have mentioned the importance of faith and your organizations both have relationships with faith.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
And religion. So what role does that play?
So for Iric, I won't speak for Joe, but I think he'll say the same thing. For me, I'm gonna mess it up. I'm a human being. I'm gonna not show up. I'm gonna disappoint. I'm gonna hurt. I'm not gonna meet the expectations, right? That's guaranteed. So we have to have something that will something that doesn't change, something that doesn't disappoint, and something that, quite frankly, is a north, something that's a compass that when society goes this way, it doesn't go this way.
Okay.
You know, something that those kids can look at and say, hey, that's in the same place, in the same spot. And we have to have a higher power. We gotta believe in something more than just man. And so that's where we start. And that's where my life changed, right? So we wanna make sure that those individuals have that same opportunity. And we're not forcing anything on them. We're not in any way, shape, or form saying that you have to believe this or see this or go here. But we do say, hey, that's who we are. And it's a part of a complete breakfast, like the commercial would say. My faith is a part of my complete holistic life. And when they see that, I don't have to force it on them. They say, hey, you know what? Why do you treat your wife that way? Why do you not talk to your kids the way that my parent talked to me? Hey, why don't you yell and scream at them? And I say, well, sometimes I do, but you might not see that. But why?
Right.
When those questions get asked, faith becomes, hey, this is this man's compass. And so I want to do that too. And that's essentially how it starts.
That's beautiful said. I don't have anything to add other than being an African American man. I'm subject to the same, things that our young men are.
Sure.
So we have to have something to hold on to, right? And so our faith is what we hold on to.
But part of the problem is in society across the board, millennials and young people, they are not joining religious organizations. They don't want the doctrine of organized religion.
To me, it's not about religion. It's about relationship with God. I wouldn't call myself religious, but I have.
So you're spiritual.
I'm very spiritual, right? In the way I conduct myself, the way I interact with people. What keeps me sane is my spirituality. So we get spirituality and religion intertwined, and it shouldn't be. Because I know a lot of religious people that wouldn't help anybody.
Right.
Wouldn't help an old lady cross the street. So that, to me, that's just rituals.
Yeah. Well, I was telling you before that I had the rabbi on, and I sort of asked her, because all these issues with different religions, and I said, what happened to the 10 Commandments? Like, why aren't we all just following the 10 Commandments and the Golden Rule? Wouldn't we all just be,
Yes.
wouldn't that be
That
right?
would be awesome.
Because it seems like the 10 Commandments have sort of just fallen by the wayside, and it's more about, the practice or the doctrine of it. And so, I think also, do you think that the faith is also that you have to have hope?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up because it, as Joe said, is the thing that keeps us moving. We have to have some level of hope in something other than man. If we have hope in man right now, we're in trouble.
Right. Because how do you? Okay. So what amazed me is just like being really looking at it. And there were certain things like when I was thinking about the issues with young men and black men in school, and it was just like the matter of that they're in public schools that are at least 50% black. Only like 75% of the math teachers are certified in math, compared to 92% in predominantly white schools. And the statistics just kept going like this. So it's not even, you can't even see it on the surface. I mean, this is like, that's just the tip of the iceberg, what we see, but you can imagine what's below.
Right.
And then you see all the issues and how, even with, systemic and institutionalized racism and absolutely relationships with other people. How do you keep finding hope? I mean, I just would find it exhausting, and I don't know if also on top of what I see is out there in society, but then also what they personally have to overcome, or relationships that they have, or difficulties at home. I mean, and where's the hope?
Well, you got to have it, and that's why that faith component in people's lives is very important, because that's the hope. That's the hope. That's, for me, it's extremely important. And we, African American people are resilient, and we've taken a lot.
Right.
And that's what irritates me a little bit when we say, "Hey, enough is enough." Now we become politicized and saying, "Oh, wait a minute, you guys are in this." They always want to point to, but they never look at the systems that's keeping us oppressed,
Right.
are keeping us from advancing to the next level.
Right.
If you don't provide opportunity, and you don't provide resources, of course you're going to be in the conditions that you're in. I mean, some of it's self-inflicted, but a lot of it's the systems that's keeping us where we are.
Right. And so part of your work has to also, I think, show the idea of personal responsibility. I mean, I sort of also feel like if you want to change the systems, you've got to be in the systems. So, I mean, if you, in a sense, if you want to change the relationships that police have with a community, then those community members need to pursue a career and go into, law enforcement.
Right.
Because I think also then that would also help with, because people don't have role models, to sort of look up to. And I think that that would help that too. But I think some of that has to be, you can't just, rely on the victim, and you can't expect it that people are going to always do things for you. You have to be part of the solution,
Iric
right?
and I talk about this all the time, getting to the table, help make policies, help the systems understand the disparity in their actions. And it's about the relationship, right? You build the relationship, you get a seat at the table, and you can influence what's happening.
And people, I mean, like through these conversations I've had, like certain things, like you don't realize that policy is so important, because when you talk about having enough affordable housing, so a lot of that has to do with zoning.
Yes.
And most people, who would know about zoning and also about how properties are assessed? And so, you nobody knows about these things that are, it's also finding out which tables are also the most important to be sitting at.
Exactly.
Because,
Agree.
it's where policy is made and determined, even on, you don't realize it on the city level. It's not just in Washington. And that you absolutely can make a difference. But I just think that it's hard. So are both of you hopeful?
Oh yeah, I'm extremely hopeful. I'm very, despite the current conditions in our country, I have an optimistic perspective on where we're going to be in the next 5 years, because I believe in the people. I believe in people, and more importantly, I have faith that our God's going to bring us through this.
And Iric, you talk a lot about people have to change their trajectory of how they think and change their lives. So are you hopeful that with everything you know and all the there's a lot that needs to be done. Are you hopeful that we can change the trajectory?
I'm hopeful because of names, and I mean that in the best way possible. I'm hopeful because of names, not name dropping, but because of names in our community. So when I look at Fort Wayne Community School Systems, I'm hopeful because of a Deborah Faye Williams Robbins in East Allen. I'm hopeful because of a Marilyn Hissong and a Tamara Kelly that we were on a Facebook Live last night. When I look at our city council, I'm hopeful because of a Sharon Tucker, for instance, Michelle Chen. When you look around, I look at our city, and regardless of where we're at, I'm hopeful because of a Tom Henry. I'm hopeful because of a Steve Reed. These are the men and women of Eric Leahy that they're public, right? And people see them, and the sound bites kind of position us to attack. But the work that we're in, we get to see the context. We get to see the person. So I end up being very weary at times. I can't lie to you. I end up going home sometimes and I'm like, I'm tired. I've had enough today. But learning more about those human beings who happen to be in those positions, right?
Right.
That's what gives me the hope. I'm hopeful because of a Hannah Headley, my mom.
Right. Yeah.
My two sons, the wife, those are the things that that kind of give me hope to know, man, you know what? We're gonna be able to get through this.
Well, you're gonna have to give me a list of those people that I should be having conversations with, because that's partly
absolutely.
what I want to be doing is not the sound bites, it's the conversation. So at the end of each And Company program, I ask guests the same 12 questions. They were popularized by the French novelist Marcel Proust, based on a Victorian parlor game. And Proust believed that by answering these questions, a person will reveal his or her true nature. So I'll ask the question and then you both can answer. What is your favorite word?
Wow. Tomorrow. Yeah.
What is your least favorite word?
Oh, gee whiz, this is a great interview. I must admit, this is a tough one here. Least favorite word, I would say, is attack right
Attack?
now. Yeah, attack.
Hate.
Hate. What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
I love people. So people.
Truth.
What turns you off creatively, emotionally, or spiritually?
Falsities.
Fakeness.
Fakeness.
Mhm.
What sound or noise do you love?
Music.
What sound or noise do you love?
Music.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Verbal attacks.
Mean-spiritedness.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Music. Can't sing, can't dance, but I'll try music.
It's gonna sound crazy. I think I dream about being a truck driver, just out on the road by myself.
What profession would you not like to do?
Podiatrist.
Okay, but feet are very important.
Yeah, podiatrist.
I wouldn't want to be in the medical field because I don't like seeing people hurt. So
What do you consider your greatest achievement?
probably just being a person of substance.
While it's not an attainment, definitely family. I wasn't supposed to be where I am with my family.
Who, living or dead, would you most like to have a conversation with?
Ooh, that's a tough one too. There's a man named Herbert Lyons who passed away. I would love to talk to him and say, hey, what do you think now?
And who was he?
He was my adopted dad. He adopted me as his surrogate son, and so he passed away in 2010. I would love, because all of the things that he said are so true, and I would just like to go back and say, man, what do you think now? What do you think now? What do you think now?
He'd probably say, I told you so.
He would definitely, I told you so, boy. That's what he would say.
Who would you like?
My mom.
Your mom?
Yeah.
How would you like to die?
Peacefully. I like to just fall asleep, dying while I'm sleeping.
I imagine this a lot. I would like for my family to be around me, and I think I would die with a smile on my face if that's the case.
And if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Well done, my good and faithful servant.
Saying, well done, my good and faithful servant.
Well, as you can see, we didn't even touch or scratch the surface,
Yeah.
but I really appreciate both having you here. And it was really great, and
No,
I
thank
hope you'll
you.
come back and we can continue to talk about the variety of subjects.
No,
And
thank you.
you can join me next time where you can again enjoy a seat at the table for great conversation and good company.